The wail of sirens blurred into the wind. Cars idled. Emergency personnel scrambled between twisted bumpers and steaming engines, and right there in the middle of it all, Emily Carver knelt in scrubs soaked to her skin, pressing her hands against a little girl's leg. "Sweetheart, I need you to look at me." She said it, her voice barely audible over the storm. "I know it hurts, but I'm right here. You're not alone." The girl whimpered. Her pastel raincoat had been half torn away, and her damp curls stuck to her cheeks. Her name, she'd said, was Luna, 9 years old, quiet, afraid, alone. Until Emily saw her pinned against the twisted guardrail. Emily wasn't even supposed to be there. She had finished a double shift at St. Vincent's in Portland, picked up Thai food, and was headed home across the Fremont Bridge. When everything stopped, she should have kept driving. She didn't. She hadn't hesitated. She never did. By the time the paramedics arrived, Emily's own shirt was torn and used as a tourniquet. Her knees ached from the asphalt. Her eyes never left Luna's. Then came the voice, sharp, controlled, but breaking beneath the surface. "That's my daughter." Emily didn't flinch. A man in a tailored jacket, soaked and out of breath, dropped beside them. Salt and pepper hair plastered to his forehead. His hands reached, then paused midair, unsure. "Luna," he said. "Baby, I'm here." Emily looked up at him for the first time. Gabriel Hartley. She recognized the name before the face. The man who restored Portland's historic neighborhoods like a calling. Who graced the pages of architectural digests and glossy regional magazines. Whose firm had rebuilt half of the Pearl District after the last flood. Widowed, father, quiet, untouchable. He didn't blink when their eyes met. He just nodded, barely, as if giving her permission to keep leading. "She's in shock," Emily told him. "Her leg's stable, but she's scared. Stay calm. Stay close." So he did, and when the paramedics lifted Luna onto the stretcher, Emily stayed until they closed the doors at the hospital. She didn't leave. Not the second her shift ended, not the hour after, or the one after that. She sat in a quiet hallway near pediatrics, with a styrofoam cup of tea that had long gone cold. Her sneakers were still wet, her hands still trembled in waves. She told herself she was just waiting, for confirmation, for a report, for peace of mind. But she knew better. When Gabriel found her, he was out of the suit jacket, sleeves rolled, phone in one hand, hospital visitor sticker peeling off the other. He paused, like he hadn't expected her to still be there. "You stayed," he said. "I clocked out hours ago," she replied, "but you stayed." Emily sipped the tea, her fingers curled around it like armor. "She reminded me of someone." Gabriel nodded slowly. "I wanted to thank you properly." Emily stood. "No need. She's safe. That's what matters." "She wouldn't have been," he said, "if you hadn't stopped." The words sat between them, fragile and unsaid. Most people don't stop. Most people pass. Emily stared at the floor. "Some things you don't pass by." There was a pause. Then he offered his hand. "Gabriel Hartley." "I know," she said. "Everyone in Portland does." He almost smiled. "Emily Carver." "Emily," he repeated, as if tasting the name. "Can I walk you out?" "No need," she said again. Then softer, "But thank you." She left him in the hallway, water still drying in her hair. 2 days passed. Emily didn't expect to see him again. But there he was on the third day, standing by the nurse's station, with a bouquet that clearly came from one of those overpriced same-day services. She spotted him before he saw her. His posture awkward, his fingers flexing like he'd rather be holding blueprints than flowers. She almost turned around, but he spotted her. And that decided it. "These are for you," he said. "I wasn't sure what you liked." "I don't really do flowers," she replied, but took them anyway. They smelled like effort, like someone trying. "I wasn't sure if it was appropriate to come back," he said. "You're her father. It's appropriate." "I meant, for you." Emily paused. "Why?" he exhaled. "I don't know. Maybe because the only people I talk to these days are contractors, investors, and my kid. And you didn't flinch." She tilted her head. "At what?" "At me." That surprised her. Not his money, not his recognition, but the idea that he was used to flinching. "I don't really scare," he stewed. She blinked. "That's forward." "It's honest." She said, "I do." He replied, "So do I." She should have said no, but something about him, his restraint, his awkwardness, the way he hadn't flinched. They met at a restaurant near Cathedral Park. Quiet, soft lighting, linen napkins. It felt like overkill, but he did this. He had the kind of presence that didn't fill a room but grounded it. The way he pulled out her chair, not out of performance but simple habit, unsettled her in the most unfamiliar way. Not because she wasn't used to kindness, but because she wasn't used to tea. He listened more than he spoke. That surprised her too. She learned. She told me she had a headache, he said. Emily swallowed hard. I didn't. What happened? Boating accident. We grew up near Lake Chilen. He loved speed. I hated it. I told him to slow down. He didn't. Her voice dipped there, just slightly, like the memory had curled itself tight around her lungs. She hadn't said those words aloud in years. Not because it hurt too much, but because she'd learned how easily people turn tragedy into conversation fodder. But he didn't. He just listened. And in that silence, she felt a rare kind of safety. Gabriel didn't push. He just nodded. The check came, and they lingered outside. The air smelled like fir trees and river wind. She started to say goodbye when he said quietly, "You're not what I expected." "Good," she said, "because I'm not here to impress you." He smiled, the kind of smile that had seen too many quiet rooms. "Then maybe," he said, "you're exactly who I needed to meet." Emily didn't answer, but her eyes softened. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't walk away fast. She didn't run. But the next morning, she was gone. No call, no note. Only a letter, folded and slipped under the door of Gabriel's downtown office. In handwriting he didn't recognize. On a blank sheet of paper were 3 sentences. "I didn't mean to care. I didn't expect her to remind me so much of him. That's why I'm leaving, before I ruin something good again." No signature. But he didn't need one. Gabriel stared at the letter like it might rearrange itself if he blinked long enough. The paper was plain, no header, no signature, but the handwriting was unmistakably hers. Tight, slanted slightly to the left, with little flourishes that gave away how hard she tried to stay composed. The ink had smudged just slightly in one corner, like maybe her hand had hesitated. Or maybe she'd cried. After all, he read it again. Not a breakup, not a confession, just an exit. A quiet retreat before anything had a chance to become real. The city pulsed outside his office windows. Portland's usual hum of bike tires and espresso machines, the clack of heels on pavement, tourists sipping lattes from sidewalk cafes, as if nothing in the world had just shifted. He sat back slowly. The letter rested in his palm like a weight he hadn't realized he was still carrying. Luna was asleep when he got home that night. Nora had stayed with her, read a few books, made her laugh, cleaned up the mess from dinner, and left a note on the counter. She asked if Emily was coming back. I said I wasn't sure. Hope that's okay. Gabriel didn't respond. He stood in the doorway of Luna's room for a long time. She was curled up under the quilt Yasmin's mother had made before the wedding, one arm flung above her head, her fingers twitching in a dream. He used to find peace in that, watching her sleep. A kind of reassurance that, even if the rest of the day had been chaotic, she was still okay, still his, still breathing in the dark. Tonight, it didn't bring peace. Only questions. He thought about Emily's hands, steady, firm, capable. The way she'd looked at Luna like she wasn't a stranger. The way she'd looked at him like he wasn't a headline. He hadn't known what to do with that. And now she was gone. By morning, the letter was still on his desk, but Gabriel had already read it enough times to burn it into memory. He didn't mention it to Nora when she stopped by with banana bread. "She left," he said quietly. Nora tilted her head. "Did you tell her she had to?" "No. She just disappeared. Left a note." Nora folded her arms. "Are you going to find her?" "She didn't ask to be found." "That's not what I asked." Gabriel didn't answer. Nora exhaled slowly, then set the bread on the counter. "You know you're allowed to care. Just because Yasmin died doesn't mean you lost the right to need someone." She made it clear. "She doesn't want to be needed. She's scared," Nora said. "There's a difference." Later that afternoon, Gabriel found himself driving without a destination. Or at least not an official one. He wound through Nob Hill, past old homes and iron gates, the kind of streets that smelled like pine needles and roasted coffee. His truck rolled slowly past bakeries and galleries, a music store where a kid strummed on a stool just outside the door. And then, almost without thinking, he turned onto a quiet side street, shaded by maple trees. May Langford's porch swing creaked as she looked up from a paperback. She saw him through her bifocals and didn't look surprised. "She's not here," May said before he could speak. "I figured," Gabriel said, stepping out of the truck. "But you want to know where she is." He hesitated. Yes, May set the book down. I'm not one to meddle. But that girl, she's been in a storm for years. She just doesn't always recognize when she's standing on dry land. Gabriel looked at the porch floor. She saved my daughter, and you think that means she owes you more than she had to give? I don't think she owes me anything. May studied him. That's the first right thing you've said. They sat in silence for a beat. The sound of cicadas buzzed between them. She mentioned once, May said slowly, that when she's overwhelmed she walks down by the harbor, past the old cannery. Nobody goes there. It's where she breathes. Gabriel nodded. By the time he found her, the sun had dipped low behind the fishing boats and the water had turned gold. She stood on the edge of the dock, arms crossed, wind pulling gently at her braid. She didn't turn when he approached. I told myself you wouldn't come, she said softly. I told myself I wouldn't either. Still, she didn't look at him. I left the letter because I didn't trust myself to say goodbye. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. Why? She turned to him then, eyes rimmed in something halfway between defiance and apology. Because you have a daughter, she said. Because you've already lost enough, and because I don't trust myself not to ruin what isn't even mine yet. Gabriel stepped closer, slowly. You didn't ruin anything, she laughed, quiet and hollow. I disappear, Gabriel. That's what I do. I come close enough to touch something, and then I leave before it touches me back. Why? Because the last time I stayed, her voice caught. The last time I stayed, I had to carry a man's grief in my hands, and walk away like it didn't break me too. He waited. She finally looked up at him, voice low. His name was Darius. He was a firefighter. We met in Atlanta during a shift. He came in after a building collapse. We weren't supposed to, but I stayed with him through recovery. I crossed lines, emotional ones. And when he died unexpectedly, his family needed someone to blame. The hospital settled. I resigned. I left the state. That's what happened. Gabriel exhaled. You never told me. You didn't ask. I didn't know there was something to ask. Emily nodded. Now you do. He studied her, really studied her. You think that makes you dangerous? He asked. I think it makes me complicated. He stepped to the edge beside her. I don't need simple. I need real. She blinked. Even when it's messy? Especially then. Silence stretched between them, the kind that didn't feel empty, only uncertain. She looked back toward the water. This doesn't feel like a beginning. It's not, Gabriel said. It's a decision. Emily turned to him again, softer this time. And what are you deciding? He hesitated, then said the words like he'd rehearsed them in his sleep. To not let someone walk away from me, because I was too afraid to make room. The breeze slowed, the sky deepened, and for the first time since she'd left that note, Emily didn't step back. She didn't run, not yet. Luna's voice broke the quiet first. Is she coming back? Gabriel looked up from his coffee, the steam curling between them. At the breakfast table, Luna's cereal had gone soggy, untouched. Her backpack sat by the door, ready, waiting, hopeful. He didn't answer right away. It felt like too much and too little to say just yes. Emily had only been gone a few days, and then she wasn't. Now she was back in town, but back wasn't the same as close. She might, he said finally, if she wants to. Luna considered this, stirring her spoon in slow circles. I liked her. I know. She listens. Different. Gabriel raised an eyebrow. Different how? Like she means it? Like she's not thinking about something else when you talk? She paused. You don't always do that. He didn't flinch, but something inside him folded a little. Children don't edit themselves, not out of cruelty, but because they haven't learned to yet. And Luna's words felt like holding up a mirror to all the ways he thought he'd been doing enough, only to realize he might have just been surviving. That landed harder than he expected. He reached across the table, resting a hand gently over hers. I'm trying. She didn't pull away. That felt like a small miracle. A sign, maybe, that repair wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was just staying in the room long enough to hear the truth and not walk away from it. By the time he pulled into the shop downtown, Gabriel's head was buzzing. Luna's words still echoed under his ribs. He'd spent the last 3 years learning how to keep the structure of things from collapsing. Wood, brick, tile. He understood how to rebuild damage. But this, whatever was growing between him and Emily, didn't follow blueprints. Emmett Hayes was already in the conference room, sleeves rolled, coffee in hand. You're late, Emmett said, not looking up from the spreadsheet. I'm not late, Gabriel replied. I'm reconsidering my relationship with punctuality. Emmett snorted. You sound like someone who's either falling in love or planning to disappear to Mexico. Gabriel sank into the chair across from him. You ever try to build something when the foundation's still shifting? Every job since 2003, Emmett said. What's going on? She left, then came back, but there's history, things she's not proud of. Emmett finally looked at him. You mean Emily? Gabriel blinked. How do you know her name? My wife, Emmett said. Nora's a social worker. They crossed paths once. Nora said Emily's one of those people who looks like she's doing fine until she starts talking. Then you hear all the things she's not saying. Gabriel sat back, the description cutting through him with startling precision. That sounded exactly right because he'd heard it too. The echoes between her words, the pauses thick with what she wouldn't say. That sounded exactly right. You like her? Emmett asked. Yes, Gabriel said. More than I expected to. Then treat her like a person, not a puzzle. Gabriel tilted his head. You try to fix things. Emmett said. That's your gift. But people aren't houses. Sometimes they want you to sit in the mess with them, not sweep it up. Gabriel didn't reply. Not right away. Later that day, Emily walked through the door of the restoration office. Without warning, no text, no call, just the sound of the bell, and her voice a second later. Hi. He looked up. She wore jeans and a navy button-down, hair tied up, no makeup. She looked like herself. Unarmored. Gabriel stood. You're early. For what? For whatever this is. Emily smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. You said you needed help with the Beaumont house, historical preservation grant paperwork. He'd mentioned it casually, 2 weeks ago. He didn't expect her to remember. You came to work? She shrugged. I have time, and a brain full of rules nobody wants to memorize. She paused. Plus, I needed a reason to walk away from my apartment this morning. He handed her a file. Their fingers brushed. Neither of them mentioned it. They spent the next 2 hours reviewing photos, grant deadlines, and building codes. She moved with quiet confidence, asking the right questions, catching a detail he'd missed. It wasn't romantic. It was better. Easy. But then, just past noon, Nora dropped by. She didn't knock. She never did. I brought cookies, Nora said brightly, walking in with a paper bag from the cafe down the block. She froze when she saw Emily. Oh, Nora said. Hi. Emily straightened. Hi. Nora blinked. I didn't realize you were working here now. I'm not. Just helping with grant filing. There was a beat of awkward silence. Nora set the cookies down. Well, I stay, Emily said too quickly. Nora's shoulders relaxed slightly. You sure? Emily nodded. Gabriel didn't say a word. He watched the way Emily's fingers tapped against the desk like they wanted to move faster than the moment would let them. Nora looked at her. You okay? I'm fine, Emily said. Fine doesn't have to mean what it usually means. Emily hesitated. I'm starting to let the air back in. Nora stepped forward, her tone softening. Then don't forget to breathe. Emily's smile, this time, was real, if tentative. I'm trying. Nora nodded. Good. And if you ever want to talk about anything, I'm around. Not as a social worker. She glanced at her. Just as someone who sees you. When Nora left, the room was too quiet. Gabriel finally said, That wasn't awkward at all. Emily laughed once. I think that was her way of offering me peace. She's good at that. Emily looked out the window. You have good people around you. They weren't always mine, Gabriel said. Some of them were Yasmin's. Emily turned slowly. Do you talk about her much? No. Why? Because I've never figured out how to do it without making the room feel like a graveyard. Emily's eyes softened. Then tell me something about her that's still alive. He paused, then quietly, she used to sing Patsy Cline while cleaning. Always off-key. Emily smiled. That's something. He looked at her. My brother used to pretend he hated sunflowers, but he planted them anyway. Silence again. Then Emily said, This thing between us, it doesn't have to be labeled, but I need you to know, I'm not good at halfway. I don't want halfway, Gabriel said. She stepped closer. But I might need space sometimes. I might pull back. I'm still learning how not to disappear when I get scared. He didn't touch her, but he didn't move either. Then I'll wait, he said. Even when you step back, I'll still be here. Something shifted in her then, subtle but deep. Emily looked at him, really looked, and nodded. Then maybe, she said softly. "We've got a shot at this." The first time Luna reached for Emily's hand, it was so quiet they almost didn't hear it. They were sitting on the front porch of Gabriel's home, an old craftsman with weathered siding and a garden that never quite cooperated. The evening air was heavy with jasmine and something sweeter no one could quite name. Crickets sang low. A ceiling fan hummed above them, lazily spinning. Emily had just finished reading the last page of a children's mystery book Luna had picked out at the library. Her voice dropped at the final sentence, giving it a hush like it mattered more than the rest. Luna didn't say a word. She simply reached over, curling her fingers around Emily's. It was the smallest moment, but it shifted something tectonic. Emily looked down, stunned, still, then slowly turned toward her. "Is that okay?" Luna asked, almost in a whisper. Emily blinked back the sting in her eyes. "It's more than okay." Gabriel, watching from inside, caught that moment through the screen door. He didn't interrupt it, he just stayed where he was, still, quiet, holding his breath like it might shatter if acknowledged too soon. Later that night, after Luna had gone to bed, Emily lingered on the porch. Gabriel joined her with 2 mugs of tea. He handed her one, then took the seat beside her. The old swing creaked slightly under their combined weight. "She's not usually that open," he said softly. "I know," Emily replied. "That's why I didn't move." Gabriel sipped from his mug. "She trusts you." Emily watched the stars begin to blink into view above the moss-draped trees. "That terrifies me." "Why?" "Because I don't want to let her down." "You won't. You don't know that." Gabriel turned to her, his expression steady. "I know you. That's enough." She looked at him then, like she wanted to believe it, but couldn't let herself quite yet. "I still have walls," she said. "I'm trying, but they go up before I even notice. Let me help take them down." Emily's voice dropped. "You make it sound so easy." "It's not," Gabriel said, "but I've restored homes that looked worse." She smiled, but there was sadness in it. "What if I'm not a home?" He reached over, brushing a strand of hair from her face, his fingers soft. "We build one, together." They sat there in silence, letting that idea settle. But peace, like all good things, never stays untouched for long. The next morning, Gabriel arrived at the office earlier than usual. The street hadn't even woken yet. The shop door creaked as he unlocked it, the faint smell of cedarwood and old paint lingering in the air. A cream envelope was slipped halfway under the door. No return address. He picked it up, hesitating. Inside was a single page, typed, simple font, no greeting. "You don't know who she really is. Ask her about Darius. Ask her what happened in Atlanta." Gabriel froze. Darius. The name echoed like a dropped wrench in an empty room. He read it again. 3 lines, no signature, no clues. The morning sun suddenly felt colder through the windows. He didn't call Emily. He couldn't. Instead, he stared at the page, like it might rewrite itself if he stared long enough. That afternoon, Emily showed up at the office with iced coffees in hand and a folder under her arm. She smiled, breezy, as if nothing had shifted. He tried to smile back. Tried, but something in his chest stayed locked. He watched the way she brushed her hair behind her ear, the way she tilted her head when she laughed. It all looked the same. And yet, the words on that paper kept bleeding through his thoughts. "You don't know who she really is." Gabriel told himself it was paranoia. Told himself people tried to sabotage good things, especially ones that grew too fast. But that night, as Emily helped Luna glue seashells to a frame they were making for May's birthday, he couldn't stop watching her. Not with suspicion, but with fear. Fear that he'd let his guard down too fast. Fear that he'd let Luna do the same. And worse, fear that he might be falling for a version of her that wasn't the whole truth. Emily glanced up from the table, smiling when she caught him staring. "What?" He shook his head. "Nothing." "You sure?" "Yeah," Gabriel lied. She didn't press, but something flickered in her eyes. She felt it. The shift. Later, after Luna went to bed, Emily leaned against the kitchen counter while Gabriel loaded the dishwasher. The light above them was soft, golden. "You're quiet," she said. "I'm tired," he replied. Emily waited a beat. "Gabriel?" He closed the dishwasher gently, turned. "What happened with Darius?" The room stilled. Emily's expression didn't crack, not at first. She blinked. Once, then again. "Where did you hear that name?" "A note," he said. "It came to the office." She looked down. Her hands tightened around the edge of the counter. "Of course it did," she said quietly. He stepped closer. "Emily, I was going to tell you." she interrupted, voice low. Eventually, when I could figure out how to say it without sounding like I was trying to cover anything up. I'm listening. She nodded, inhaling slowly. I told you he was a firefighter. That part was true. We knew each other before he came into my unit. It wasn't serious. We'd met at a friend's party. Then, the accident happened. He was admitted with internal injuries. I tried to transfer his case, but they were short-staffed. I stayed too close. I sat with him when he didn't have family around. She paused, her voice caught, and then he didn't make it. Gabriel stayed silent. His sister filed a complaint, said I crossed boundaries. The hospital didn't want a scandal. They offered a settlement. I wasn't fired, but I resigned. I couldn't breathe there anymore. She finally looked up. I didn't kill him, but I loved someone I couldn't save, and I let that define me for longer than I should have. Gabriel didn't move. Emily's eyes glistened. You can walk away now. Most people do. He stepped forward slowly. I'm not most people, but you're thinking about it. I'm thinking about my daughter, about trust. I've never lied to you, she said. Not once. He didn't answer. Emily nodded, barely. Okay? She grabbed her keys off the counter, her voice trembling. I'll go. He reached for her arm. She stopped. I just need to think, he said. That's all. Emily looked at him, wounded, proud, terrified. Then she pulled away, gently, and this time when she left, she didn't promise to come back. The quiet that followed Emily's departure wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, a stillness that hummed beneath the surface, like something in the house had shifted out of place, and no one could say exactly what. Gabriel stood in the kitchen for a long time after the door clicked shut, staring at the space she'd occupied just moments before. He didn't chase her. He couldn't. Not yet. Upstairs, Luna's bedroom light was still on. He climbed the steps slowly, the ache in his chest more exhausting than any renovation job he'd ever taken on. She was drawing. Her notebook was splayed across the bed, pages scattered like wind had blown through. Crayons, pencils, a small green eraser shaped like a frog. When she looked up, her face was lit with a quiet sort of hope. Is Emily staying over? Gabriel stopped, his breath caught, he said. She had to go home. Oh. Luna blinked, then looked back down at the paper. He stepped inside. You okay? She shrugged. I was going to give her this. She held up the drawing. It was a picture of the three of them, crude and sweet, with curly lines for hair and Emily's blue scrubs carefully colored in. Above them, written in Luna's careful block letters, were the words, "People who don't leave." Gabriel's heart cracked down the center. He sat beside her, pulling her into his side. She didn't leave because of you, he said. Then, why? Because grown-ups don't always know how to stay, even when they want to. Luna was quiet for a long time. Then she whispered, Do you think she'll come back? Gabriel didn't answer. Not because he didn't want to, but because he honestly didn't know. The next morning, he found himself avoiding the office. The walls there felt too close, too full of memory. Instead, he drove down N23rd, then toward the waterfront, until he ended up outside May Langford's little yellow house with the peeling porch steps. She was watering her ferns when he walked up. You look like someone who slept next to guilt last night, May said, not even turning around. He let out a breath. She told me the truth and I froze. May finally turned, her eyes sharp beneath the brim of her sun hat. Of course you did. Gabriel frowned. You don't think I had a right to be cautious? I think you had a responsibility to be human, May replied. That girl has been carrying the weight of one mistake for years, not because she did something terrible, but because she felt too much. I have a daughter. I had to think about her? May stepped closer, her voice soft but pointed. And what do you think Luna is learning right now? That people can be part of her life until they're not? That caring means disappearing? Gabriel said nothing. May sighed. You don't have to fix everything, Gabriel. But if you love that woman and don't pretend you don't, you better stop letting fear write the story for you. He left not long after, but her words stayed. Back at the house, he sat in his truck, staring at the dashboard. The letter, the name, the conversation in the kitchen. Emily's eyes when she said, I didn't kill him, but I loved someone I couldn't save. She had told him the truth. It had cost her everything. And still, she'd trusted him with it. Later that day, Nora called. I heard. Gabriel didn't ask how. Portland had a way of carrying whispers faster than rain through gutters. She told me the same story, Nora said. Years ago, when I was still working intake. It wasn't her fault, Gabriel. She tried to follow protocol. She asked for a transfer. She was denied. She stayed human when everyone else wanted her to be clinical. And she paid for it. He closed his eyes. Why didn't she tell me sooner? Because she didn't want you to look at her the way you are right now. How's that? Like she's a risk. He hung up a few minutes later, his chest hollow. That night, as he walked through the house, he passed Luna's drawing again. He stopped, really looked at it. People who don't leave. Emily had left because she was trying to protect them. From her past, from pain, from becoming another name whispered behind hands. She hadn't walked away out of weakness. She'd done it out of fear. And fear was something he knew intimately. It was the reason he still couldn't bring himself to pack away Yasmin's wedding dress. The next morning, he found himself back on the dock where they first reconnected, after she left the letter. The sky was overcast. The wind carried a chill that didn't belong to September. She wasn't there, but he sat anyway. An hour passed, and then he heard footsteps, slow, hesitant. He turned. Emily stood a few feet away, hair pulled back, hands stuffed into the pockets of her jacket. She looked tired, beautiful, stronger than he remembered, and more fragile all at once. You found me, she said softly. You left me no choice. She didn't smile, but she didn't leave. Gabriel stood. I should have listened better. You did, she said, but only to your fear. He nodded. You're right. They stood in silence. The harbor stretched out behind them, gulls cutting across the sky like punctuation. Finally, he stepped closer. You didn't ruin anything, Gabriel said. Emily looked down. You paused. I panicked. And now? Now I'm here. She looked at him then, eyes full. I'm tired of waiting for people to decide if I'm worth the risk, she said. You're not a risk, he whispered. You're the only thing that's made sense in a long time. She didn't move, so he did. Just one step. But I don't want to lose you again, Gabriel said. Emily's voice broke. Then don't. And this time, when she reached for his hand, he met her halfway. The rhythm between them changed after that day on the dock. It didn't snap into place like a puzzle. It shifted, like tidewater, gradually, insistently, sometimes smooth, sometimes tangled in the drift. Emily didn't move in. She didn't start leaving toothbrushes or shoes under the entryway bench, but she began to show up more. Not because she had to, because she chose to. Luna noticed first. One evening, after a long day at the shop, Emily appeared at the house carrying a mason jar of lemon lavender cookies and a paperback tucked under her arm. Luna opened the door before Gabriel could. You came back? She said flatly, eyes narrowed. I did, Emily said softly. Luna folded her arms. You left without saying goodbye. Emily knelt to her level. You're right, and I'm sorry. Luna looked at her for a long moment, then said, What kind of cookies? Lemon lavender. My mom used to make them. I've never had lavender in a cookie. Want to try? Luna hesitated. Okay, but you have to read 2 chapters tonight, not 1. Emily smiled. Deal. Gabriel watched from the doorway, hands tucked into his pockets, chest tight in a way that had nothing to do with nerves and everything to do with hope. That night, the 3 of them sat on the living room rug. Emily reading in her steady, low voice. Luna curled up beside her. Gabriel leaning back on one hand, quietly watching them, like a man waking up inside a life he didn't know he'd missed. After Luna fell asleep upstairs, Emily wandered into the kitchen while Gabriel rinsed mugs and packed away the rest of the cookies. He looked up. You didn't have to come tonight? I wanted to. You always want to? She raised an eyebrow. Are you asking if I'm staying for good? No, he said. I'm asking if you're scared every time you show up. She leaned against the counter, arms folded. Yes. Why? Because this feels real, and I don't always trust real. Gabriel dried his hands. Neither do I. There was a pause, a beat full of everything unsaid. Then she asked quietly, Do you ever still think about her? About Yasmin? He didn't look away. All the time. Does that make this harder? It makes it deeper, Gabriel said. Because I know what it's like to love someone and not get a chance to say goodbye. And I know what it's like to stop yourself from loving again because you're afraid of losing again. Emily lowered her gaze. Me too. He stepped toward her slowly. You're not a replacement. She looked up. And you're not a rescue. I don't want to fix you, Gabriel said. I just want to know you. She exhaled shakily. That might be harder. I'm patient. You say that now, she whispered. He reached out, brushed a finger along the edge of her sleeve. "I'll keep saying it." The contact was light, almost nothing, but it sent a jolt up her spine. The kind that came not from fear, but recognition. A kind of emotional muscle memory she hadn't used in years. The air between them tightened, softened. A stillness with gravity. Then the sound of Luna's footsteps upstairs broke the moment. "Can't sleep," she called down. "I'll be right there," Gabriel replied. Emily smiled faintly. "I should go." "Stay," he said, too quickly. She blinked. He clarified. "I mean, for tea, on the porch." She nodded. "All right." They sat outside in the dark, the porch swing groaning under their weight. Fireflies flickered across the yard like breath held in flashes. Emily wrapped her hands around the warm mug he handed her. "You know what scares me most?" she said after a long silence. He looked at her. "What?" "Not the past, not Darius, not even being judged for it." "Then what?" "Being accepted despite it and not knowing what to do with that kind of grace." Gabriel turned toward her. "You don't have to do anything with it. You just have to let it be real." She stared into her tea, then whispered, "I've never had that before." There was no bitterness in her voice, just quiet awe, like someone watching the first snow and not knowing whether to trust it would stay. "You do now." A few nights later, they went out for dinner. Nothing formal. A seafood place on the edge of Salvi Island with paper tablecloths and hush puppies that came in metal baskets. Emily wore a linen dress and sandals. Her hair was down, loose around her shoulders. Gabriel watched her across the table, struck by how she could move through a room without announcing herself, and still be the most magnetic person there. It wasn't confidence. It was clarity. The kind that comes from surviving things no one should have to and still choosing softness. They talked about Luna's upcoming school project, the antique door Gabriel was salvaging for a new client, a book Emily was reading about resilience and anatomy. Halfway through the meal, Emily leaned in slightly and asked, "Why me?" He set his fork down. "What?" "You could be with someone easier, someone with less baggage, a clean slate." Gabriel met her gaze. "Clean slates are overrated. They don't teach you anything." She held his stare. "And I do?" "You make me feel awake again," he said. "Not polished, not protected, just here." She looked away, blinking fast. "You're going to make me cry in a place that serves tartar sauce in packets." "I'll risk it." On the drive home, they didn't speak much, but the silence was the kind that wrapped around them like a soft blanket. Not emptiness, just comfort. When they pulled up in front of her apartment, Emily didn't move to get out right away. She sat there, staring at the dashboard, fingers nervously tracing a line across her jeans. Then she said, barely above a whisper, "I want to try." Gabriel turned to her, heart knocking against his ribs. "Try what?" "This. Us. Without conditions, without running." He reached for her hand. "I already am." She squeezed his fingers gently, then got out of the truck. Before she shut the door, she leaned back in and said, "You make the quiet feel safe again." Then she closed it, and Gabriel sat there long after she disappeared behind the front door, the echo of her voice still warm in his chest. Emily stood in front of the mirror, one hand resting lightly on the porcelain edge of the sink, the other twisting the silver pendant at her neck, a small sunflower charm, dulled from years of wear. The reflection staring back at her was the same face she'd seen every day. But something about it looked different now, softer, tired in a different way, hopeful in a way that felt dangerous. Her phone buzzed on the counter. "Gabriel, Luna wants to show you her art project, but only if you promise not to laugh." Emily smiled, biting her lip as she typed back, "Emily, I would never. I'm on my way." 10 minutes later, she pulled up to the house. The familiar creak of the gate greeted her like a whispered welcome. The porch lights were already on, casting a soft glow that made the weathered wood look warm instead of worn. Luna opened the door before she even knocked, eyes wide with excitement. "I made a city," she announced, pulling Emily by the hand. "You made a what?" "A paper city, with people and a library, and even a bakery. Want to see?" "I'd be honored." Gabriel looked up from the kitchen as they passed. "She's been talking about it for hours. You'd think she designed Portland herself." "Better," Luna said confidently. "Mine has flying mail trucks." Emily laughed, letting herself be led into the living room where the project was spread across the floor. Colored construction paper, popsicle sticks, tape everywhere, and imagination running wild. Luna explained every detail: the park with paper benches, the candy shop with a giant lollipop sign, the hospital with a tiny red cross drawn in marker. "This one," she said, pointing to a small paper house with hearts on the roof, "is for people who need to feel safe again." Emily paused. "That's a beautiful idea. It's called the home house." Gabriel knelt beside them, glancing up at Emily. "She came up with that, all on her own." Luna looked between them. "It's where you go when you're tired of being scared." Emily couldn't find words fast enough, so she just reached for Luna and pulled her into a gentle hug. "You are the smartest kid I've ever met." "I know," Luna mumbled into her shoulder. Emily held her a moment longer than usual, her chin resting lightly on Luna's hair, breathing in the scent of sleep and safety, the kind of closeness she hadn't let herself feel in years. Later, after Luna had fallen asleep, Emily stood on the back porch, staring out at the yard. The garden was overgrown in places, wild with life that hadn't been trimmed back in time. A few fireflies danced lazily above the grass. Gabriel joined her, 2 mugs of tea in hand. He handed her one, then leaned against the railing beside her. "She adores you." Emily took the mug carefully. "She's the bravest person in this house. You're not far behind." She looked at him. "You really think that?" "I know that." They stood quietly, the silence tender instead of tense. Emily listened to the creak of the wood under their feet, the soft hum of crickets, the pulse of a place that didn't demand anything from her. It felt safe. Emily finally spoke. "My mom used to tell me that some houses creak because they're broken, others creak because they've survived storms." Gabriel smiled faintly. "That sounds like something May would say." "She probably did. I just remember it through my mother's voice." He sipped his tea. "Your mom? What was she like?" "Warm, stubborn, fierce when she had to be. She cried during commercials and kept every single drawing my brother and I made. She must have been proud of you." "She passed before I became a nurse," Emily said, staring out into the dark. "But I think she'd like who I am now. Even if it took me too long to get here." "You got here," Gabriel said. "That's what matters." A breeze pushed past them, lifting the edge of her sweater. "I think," she whispered, "I'm finally starting to believe I can stay." Gabriel turned toward her. "What would staying look like?" "Messy, probably. Quiet. I'd keep my place for now, but maybe cook here more. Bring over a plant I'd inevitably forget to water. Come to Luna's art shows." "And us?" he asked. She looked at him, eyes wide open, no fear this time. "You? I'd love you. Gently. Every day. Even when you're hard to love." He took a breath, like he hadn't known he'd needed it. "That's the only kind of love I want." They didn't kiss. Not then. It wasn't the moment for that. Instead, Emily reached for his hand, linked their fingers, and leaned her head against his shoulder. The warmth of his skin, the steadiness of his breath, it grounded her in a way nothing else had. And for the first time, she didn't imagine herself leaving. The next morning, May showed up with a basket of scones and a sly smile. "You've got that look," she said to Emily. "What look?" "The one that says you're either about to run or about to bloom." Emily raised an eyebrow. "And which one do you think it is?" May handed her a warm scone wrapped in linen. "I'm betting on bloom." Inside, Luna was painting at the kitchen table, humming a made-up tune. Emily watched her, something swelling in her chest. Not anxiety, not doubt, belonging. Gabriel came down the stairs, still half-buttoning his shirt, looking at them like he didn't understand how he'd gotten this lucky, and was afraid to question it. Luna looked up, beamed, and asked, "Can Emily come with us to the farmer's market today?" Luna looked at Gabriel. Gabriel looked at Emily. Emily looked at Luna. "Only if we get kettle corn." "Deal," Luna said. May watched them from the door, eyes misty. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Because in that moment, with paper cities on the floor, kettle corn plans in the air, and a woman who once only knew how to run now standing still, it was clear they weren't just building something together. They were already living in it. The farmer's market was already buzzing when they arrived. Strings of lights stretched between the trees, even in daylight, like the town couldn't quite let go of the idea of magic. Musicians played near the gazebo, their melodies mixing with the chatter of neighbors and the soft clink of mason jars being filled with local honey. Emily walked between the stalls, Luna's hand in one of hers and a canvas tote in the other. Gabriel trailed behind, one eye on them, the other on hand-painted signs promising jams, candles, and tomatoes grown with more love than water. Luna stopped in front of a stand selling handmade soaps. "These smell like Grandma's house," she said, pressing a bar to her nose. "Which one?" Emily asked. "I don't know," Luna replied, "but I miss the way it smelled." Gabriel gently tousled her hair. "We'll get one then." They bought two. Later, while Luna helped an elderly woman at the flower stand tie up a bouquet, Emily and Gabriel sat on a bench near the live oak. "You're good with her," he said. "She makes it easy. She doesn't let just anyone in." "I didn't either," Emily said softly. "Maybe that's why we see each other." Gabriel nodded, then fell quiet. Emily looked over. "What?" He hesitated. "There's something I want to talk to you about." Her body tensed just slightly. "Okay. It's not about us. Not really, but maybe." She waited. "You remember Victor Gaines? Your business partner," she said. "The one who looks like he was carved out of mahogany and spreadsheets?" Gabriel cracked a smile. "That's the one." "Yeah. What about him?" "He's not subtle," Gabriel said. "And lately he's been asking a lot of questions about you." Emily's face didn't change, but the air around her seemed to still. "Questions like what? Where you're from? Why you left Atlanta? Why you're here now?" Emily sat back, eyes narrowing slightly. "Why would he care?" "Because Victor doesn't believe in things without data. People with pasts make him nervous." "I'm not part of your company." "You're part of my life," Gabriel said. "That's enough." She looked away. "So what do? You want me to do nothing?" Gabriel said quickly. "I just wanted to tell you before someone else did, before it gets twisted." Emily nodded slowly. "Thanks for telling me. He doesn't speak for me." "I know," she said, "but he might speak to others." "I'll handle that." "Just be careful," she said. "Rumors are fast and sticky, especially when people want them to be true." They fell quiet again as Luna returned with a fistful of marigolds and a grin that melted everything else away. "Can we get lemonade now?" she asked. Gabriel stood. "Only if we get extra sugar." "I thought you liked it unsweet," Emily teased. "I make exceptions," he said, glancing at her. The rest of the morning passed with sticky fingers, paper cups, and laughter that came a little too easily to be temporary. But underneath it all, something was beginning to shift again, subtle but real. That night, as Emily packed up her tote in the front room, she found a folded slip of paper tucked into the side pocket. Not a note, just a name and an address, scribbled, rushed. Celia Holloway, sister of Darius Charleston. No envelope, no explanation. Emily's heart lurched. The name wasn't one she'd spoken aloud in years. Her phone buzzed, a text from a number she didn't recognize. You should know who's still talking before they talk to him again. She stared at the screen, fingers tightening. The next morning she sat across from Clara in the back booth of the bakery, 2 blocks from the shop. She hadn't told Gabriel, not yet. "She's here," Emily whispered. "In Charleston. I don't know why, or who told her I was here." Clara stirred her tea with the kind of calm that came from years of absorbing other people's chaos. "You think she's looking to reopen the past?" "I don't know, but if she is..." "You don't owe her anything," Clara said. "You already gave her your name, your job, your peace. That's enough." Emily swallowed. "But if she goes to Victor..." Clara's brow furrowed. "Then it's time you decide something." "What?" "If you're going to live in the light, or keep waiting for the next shadow to catch you." Emily stared at her tea. "I'm tired of running." "Then don't." Later that day, Emily stood outside the Thorne Restoration office, the letter still folded in her coat pocket. Through the window, she could see Gabriel laughing with a client. His sleeves were rolled up. He looked at ease, grounded. She wondered how long she could keep hers from shaking. Victor stepped out of the building before she had a chance to move. He stopped when he saw her, smiled politely, too politely. "Emily," he said. "Funny, I was just thinking about you." "Is that right?" "I like to understand the people close to Gabriel," he said smoothly. "I'm not a file to be read," she said, voice cool. "Then maybe you shouldn't leave papers lying around," he replied. "We all have a past." "So do you," she said, "but I'm not digging through yours." Victor stepped closer. "Let me give you some advice. Don't get too comfortable. Comfort is fragile." Emily held his gaze. "And fear is loud. I'm learning which one I'd rather live with." She turned and walked away, her heart pounding, but her spine straight. She didn't tell Gabriel about the encounter that night, not yet. But she sat beside him on the porch, fingers curled around his, and whispered, "I need to tell you something, soon." He nodded. "Whenever you're ready." And for the first time, Emily believed he meant it. Emily stood on the shoreline, just after sunrise, barefoot in the cold sand, her shoes dangling from her hand. Portland's harbor was quiet, hushed like it was holding something back. Fog drifted low over the water, and the sky hadn't decided if it wanted to be blue or gray. She hadn't slept after Victor's words yesterday. Sleep had felt like a luxury she couldn't afford, not because she was afraid of what he'd say, but because of what she knew she had to say. The letter in her coat pocket felt heavier than paper. It pulsed like something alive. Celia Holloway, Darius's sister, here in this city. Emily hadn't reached out yet, but she knew the clock was ticking. She could feel it behind her. The sound of footsteps on the boardwalk made her turn. Gabriel. He didn't say anything at first. He just walked up beside her, glanced down at her bare feet, then out toward the water. "You always come here when you're about to do something hard," he said. She nodded slowly. "It's the only place that doesn't ask questions." Gabriel waited. Emily took a breath that shivered on the way out. "When Darius died, I didn't just lose a patient. I lost the version of myself I still believed was untouchable. I thought I could keep everything separate, work, heart, boundaries, but I couldn't." Gabriel stayed silent, listening. His sister, Celia, didn't believe me when I said I wasn't in love with him, but I was. Not the way he wanted, maybe. But I cared. I cared so much. I sat in that hospital room until he took his last breath. "She blamed me," Emily said. "Said I blurred the lines, that I gave him hope when I couldn't give him forever." She paused, eyes fixed on the water. "And maybe I did. Maybe I was selfish with my comfort. Maybe I couldn't stand watching him die alone." Gabriel turned toward her. "You stayed. That's not selfish. But it cost me everything. My job, my reputation, my sense of control. I came here to start over, and now she's here. And Victor, he's circling like just waiting for me to be the scandal he always suspected." She pulled the paper from her pocket, handed it to him. He read the name, the address, said nothing. "I want to talk to her," Emily whispered, "before someone else does." Gabriel folded the paper carefully. "You don't have to do that alone." "Yes," she said, meeting his eyes. "I do." That afternoon, Emily stood on the front porch of a townhouse just off Hawthorne Street. The house was modest but proud, brick with green shutters and a wreath on the door that looked hand-tied. She pressed the bell and waited. Each second stretched like a held breath. The door opened slowly. Celia, older than Emily remembered, with streaks of silver in her hair and eyes that once held so much grief they seemed permanently darkened by it, stared for a moment. Then, without emotion, she stepped aside. "I figured you would come." Emily walked in. They sat in the living room. No coffee offered, no pleasantries. Celia folded her arms. "Why now?" "Because someone else might tell our story wrong," Emily said. "And I can't let that be the last word." Celia studied her. "You think I'm here to ruin your life? I don't know why you're here. I moved, that's all. New job, new chapter. But you left the letter." "I didn't," Celia said, eyes hard. "Someone else did." Emily blinked. "Then who?" "I don't know, but maybe you should start asking." They sat in silence, thick with years of unspoken things. Finally, Celia leaned forward. "I hated you for a long time. I know. I blamed you because he smiled more when you were around, because you saw parts of him I never would, because in the end, he asked for you, not me." Emily's throat tightened. "I didn't want that. But you were there. And I wasn't. And grief doesn't care about fairness." A long pause. Then Celia looked down at her hands. "He loved you, whether you asked for it or not." "I loved him," Emily said, "but not the way he wanted. I told him that, but I couldn't walk away." Celia nodded slowly. "I don't hate you anymore." Emily blinked back tears. "Why?" "Because it's exhausting," Celia whispered, "and because I see what carrying him cost you." They didn't hug. They didn't cry together. But when Emily stood to leave, Celia touched her arm gently. "You have a good life now," she said. "Don't let ghosts keep the door open." Outside, Emily exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding for 4 years. When she returned to Gabriel's house, the porch lights were on. She climbed the steps slowly, the air smelling faintly of rosemary and clean wood. Gabriel opened the door before she could knock. He looked at her for a long beat. "You okay?" "No," she said. But they sat together on the porch swing, Luna asleep upstairs, the night thick with summer and stillness. Emily leaned into him, her voice quiet. She doesn't hate me anymore. That's something. She reminded me that I have a good life. You do, Gabriel said. So do I? Emily turned to him. Victor's not going to stop. I know, he wants to control your narrative and mine. He won't. Emily hesitated. What if he already has? Gabriel reached over, took her hand. Then we write it back together. She nodded slowly, pressing her forehead to his shoulder, and for the first time since she left Atlanta, the past didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a chapter, closed but not erased. Just part of the story, not the end of it. The morning after Emily's conversation with Celia, Portland wore a stillness that felt like a warning. Light fog clung to the rooftops, as if the sky was trying to hold everything in place, trying to delay whatever was coming next. Emily stood at her kitchen counter, fingers wrapped around a mug. She hadn't sipped from it. The tea had gone cold. She hadn't noticed. She kept replaying Celia's words. Someone else left that note. There were only a few people who had any knowledge of her past: Clara, Gabriel, May. None of them would betray her like that, which meant the circle was bigger than she realized. Her phone buzzed. May, swing by the shop this morning when you're free. Something came up. That was all it said. No punctuation, no emojis, no warm closing. Emily was already grabbing her keys before she'd replied. The shop smelled like eucalyptus and old pages, May's favorite. Emily stepped inside, instantly feeling the hush of the place settle over her like a shawl. May was behind the counter, polishing a glass vase with slow, purposeful circles. I didn't mean to scare you, she said without looking up. You didn't, Emily replied. Just set off every internal alarm I have. May looked up then, her expression unreadable. There was someone here this morning, asking questions. Emily's breath caught. Victor? No, a woman. Sharp voice, cool eyes, said she was a writer working on a profile about second chances in small towns. Did she give a name? May nodded. Celia Holloway. Emily's blood ran cold. That doesn't make sense. I just saw her. She said she wasn't. She's not the one. You talked to her? Emily blinked. I called Clara after she left, cross-checked the name with a contact she had. The real Celia Holloway lives in Atlanta and hasn't been in Portland in over a year. Emily stared, stunned. Then who? May's gaze hardened. Victor's assistant, maybe, or someone hired to stir the waters. Everything spun at once. The note, the warning text, the conversation that felt too practiced, too exact. I told her. Nothing, May said, but she knew enough to rattle the cage. Emily swallowed, her voice thin. He's trying to blow this open. May leaned forward, her voice low and steady. Then you need to be louder with the truth than he is with the lies. Emily left the shop in a blur of thoughts. The puzzle had more pieces now, and the picture was turning fast. That evening she sat on the back porch of Gabriel's house, her hands balled in her lap. He sat across from her, elbows on his knees, eyes searching her face. I have to tell you something, she said. Gabriel nodded. Okay. She told him everything, about the fake Celia, about May, about the web of manipulation Victor was spinning quietly behind the scenes. When she was done, she waited. Gabriel leaned back, exhaled hard through his nose. He's always been calculated. But this... He's gonna take it public, Emily said. Spin it like I'm unstable, hiding something dangerous. Gabriel's jaw clenched. And what? Hope you walk away? Emily's voice broke. Would you? He looked at her for a long time, then quietly, not a chance. Her eyes welled. She blinked quickly. You don't have to carry this with me. I'm not carrying it, I'm standing beside it, he said. There's a difference. She looked at him, really looked, the steadiness in his voice, the anchor in his eyes. Then we tell the truth, Emily said. Together. Before he can poison it. Gabriel nodded. Let's start tomorrow. But it didn't wait that long. The next morning, Gabriel opened his email to find a forwarded message from a client. A link, a subject line. Your new girlfriend, Portland's most controversial nurse. Emily was on the screen. A photo from years ago, likely pulled from an old staff directory. Below it, a sensationalist headline. Cherry-picked details from her past. One-sided quotes, twisted facts. Victor's name wasn't on it, but his fingerprints were everywhere. Gabriel scrolled, his heart pounding. There was a quote from someone anonymous, someone posing as a former colleague, talking about blurred lines, emotional manipulation, unstable tendencies. He clicked away from it and stared at the wall. When Emily arrived, he didn't say anything, just held up his phone. She read it in silence, her face slowly draining of color. "I was afraid of this," she whispered. "It's garbage," Gabriel said, "but it's loud, and people listen to loud. What if it costs you everything?" "Then it wasn't worth keeping," he replied. She looked at him, wide-eyed. Gabriel reached for her hand. "We fight it, with facts, with love, with honesty. We don't run." "But if Victor—" "I'm not afraid of Victor Gaines," Gabriel said. "He's not the storm. He's the echo of one, and we've already survived worse." Emily nodded, a single tear sliding down her cheek. He wiped it gently. "We're not hiding anymore." And as Luna came down the stairs with a sleepy smile and bed hair, calling for pancakes, Emily realized something. The story wasn't about whether people believed her. It was about whether she believed she was still allowed to be whole. And right there in that kitchen, with Gabriel's hand in hers and Luna's voice echoing through the room, she knew the answer. The rain came without warning. Emily stood just inside the entry of Thorne & Co. Restoration, watching the droplets blur the view through the glass like the world outside was being erased and redrawn. The air smelled of cedar, sawdust, and something deeper, uncertainty. She clutched the printed article in her hand, still creased from being folded and unfolded a dozen times. The words hadn't changed, but the weight of them had. Gabriel stepped in from the workshop, wiping his hands on a rag. His sleeves were rolled up, forearms speckled with dust and effort. He looked at her like he had all week, like she was something worth standing between and a storm. But today his eyes held something else too. "Victor wants a meeting," Gabriel said flatly. Emily's stomach dropped. "What kind of meeting?" "The kind where he pretends it's about business," Gabriel replied. "But it's really about power." She didn't move. "You're going to go." "I have to. He's threatening to pull funding from 2 of our biggest renovation contracts. Says the firm's reputation is at risk because of my personal ties." Emily's voice was barely above a whisper. "Because of me. Because he needs a villain," Gabriel said. "And I won't let it be you." She stepped toward him, her voice trembling. "If it costs you everything, Gabriel, I can walk away." His expression cracked, pained. "Don't say that. I'm serious. You've built this with your hands. I can't be the reason it falls apart." "You're not the reason," he said, stepping closer. "He is, and I won't let him hold our future hostage." The word "our" lingered between them like a vow. He brushed a damp curl away from her cheek. "You told the truth. That's more than he ever has." A knock came from the office door behind them. "Clara." She stepped in, umbrella dripping, her expression unreadable. "You've got company." Gabriel glanced at Emily, then turned to Clara. "Victor?" "No. Press." Emily froze. "What?" "Local reporter says he wants a follow-up, clarification on a few details in the article." Emily exhaled slowly, her pulse ringing in her ears. "They're already digging deeper." Clara raised an eyebrow. "He's waiting outside. You don't have to talk to him." "Yes, I do," Emily said. Clara looked at her for a long beat, then nodded once. "I'll be here, if you need a reason to walk away." Emily stepped outside into the rain without an umbrella. The reporter stood under the awning, notebook in hand, thin-rimmed glasses fogging slightly. "Emily Hartman?" he asked. "Yes." "I appreciate you taking a moment. I know this must be uncomfortable." She didn't smile. "Let's skip the performance." He cleared his throat. "There are inconsistencies in the story that ran this morning. I'd like to offer you a chance to set the record straight." She looked him in the eye. "I was a nurse in Atlanta. I cared for Darius Holloway. We became close, not inappropriate, just human. He died. I stayed through it. His family blamed me for things I never did. My hospital protected their image, not the truth." The reporter scribbled, then looked up. "Why come to Portland? Because I needed to breathe. Because I lost who I was. And because running felt easier than proving anything to people who'd already decided what they wanted to believe." "Why stay?" he asked. Emily's voice softened. "Because I found people here who looked past the noise, who saw me, not the version in a headline." The reporter paused. "And Victor Gaines?" "I don't answer to men who use fear as leverage," she said. "Print that if you want something real." He blinked, then quietly closed his notebook. "Thank you." Back inside, Emily was toweling rain from her hair when Gabriel appeared again, his phone in hand. He hesitated. "What is it?" she asked. "Victor just emailed." She waited. "He's terminating the contracts." Gabriel said. The room tilted slightly as if the floor pulled back a step. And the board? She asked. I don't know yet. Emily's hand went to her mouth. I'm so sorry, Gabriel. Don't, he said firmly. Don't take this on. You didn't cause this. I did, she whispered, by existing in your world. No, he said, voice low, steady, by loving me in it, and I wouldn't trade that for a dozen contracts. Clara stepped back into the room with May right behind her. Neither spoke, but their presence was steady. Sure. May crossed the room and handed Emily a manila envelope. What's this? Emily asked. Paperwork, May said simply. Proof Victor's been using firm resources to fund a personal PR campaign against you. Gabriel blinked. How did you get this? May tilted her head. Let's just say Victor's not as careful with his secrets as he is with his image. Emily opened the file slowly. Emails, transfers, screenshots. You can clear your name, May said, and if the firm has any backbone, they'll clear Gabriel's too. Emily looked at Gabriel. He nodded. Then let's finish this. Outside, the rain softened to a drizzle, like even the storm had started to let go. Emily sat at the long oak table in Clara's dining room. The file from May opened before her like a bomb with the pin pulled. Each page was a shard of truth. Itemized invoices misfiled under vague consulting codes, emails where Victor had approved anonymous PR spending, and screenshots of texts that hinted at strategic leaks. She could feel the tremble in her hands as she sorted the papers, each one confirming that this wasn't just paranoia. It was personal. It had always been personal. Clara poured 2 cups of black tea, setting one in front of her. The question isn't whether it's enough to prove sabotage, she said. It's whether you're ready for the noise that comes with being right. Emily's down at the documents. It's not just about clearing my name anymore. No, Clara agreed. It's about standing up to someone who counted on your silence. Emily looked up. He's not going to stop. Then you have to speak louder. Later that afternoon, Gabriel met her outside the courthouse. He looked calm, composed, but his eyes tracked everything. The passing cars, the camera crews lingering across the street, the small murmurs that followed them like static. May sent the documents to the board, he said as they walked. We've got a meeting next week, and until then, we do what we said, we tell the truth. Inside the building, they met with a small circle of journalists from local and regional outlets. Emily had insisted on one thing: no press statements, no speeches, just one conversation. Recorded, transparent. The room buzzed with quiet urgency. A few familiar faces, some skeptical, some curious. And then there was that heavy pause right before someone hits record. Emily cleared her throat. I'm not here to defend gossip, she began. I'm here to tell a truth that someone tried very hard to bury. She laid it out simply. Her role as a nurse in Atlanta, her bond with Darius Holloway, how grief made the lines blurry but never unethical, how the hospital distanced itself to avoid media fallout, how she had left because she couldn't live with the weight of silence any longer. And finally, she placed the envelope on the table. These documents show an orchestrated effort to discredit me for personal leverage. I won't speculate on motive. I'll let the facts speak. A journalist raised a hand. Why now? Emily didn't flinch. Because I found something worth staying quiet for, and someone worth speaking up with. She glanced at Gabriel, who met her gaze without hesitation. They stepped outside into the golden hush of late afternoon. It wasn't raining this time. The sky had split open, bright and wide. Proud of you, Gabriel said. I don't feel brave, she admitted. You look it. They walked in silence for a bit, down the courthouse steps, past the press, past the whispers. Then Emily stopped. Do you think people will believe me? She asked. I think the right ones already do. That night, the porch light glowed soft against the backdrop of dusk. Emily stood with Luna at the porch swing, watching the little girl rock back and forth with sleepy eyes. I heard Daddy on the phone, Luna said. He said you're strong. Emily smiled, brushing a strand of hair from Luna's forehead. Do you think that's true? Luna nodded. You don't cry in front of me. That's strong. Emily swallowed, her throat catching. I cry sometimes, just not always where people can see. Luna leaned her head on Emily's shoulder. That's okay. I still like you. Gabriel stepped out with 2 mugs of cocoa and handed one to Emily. She took it with a soft, thanks, and they stood side by side, watching the sky fade to lavender. May says the board wants a vote, Gabriel said. They want to decide if Victor's behavior violates ethics clauses. And what if they say it doesn't? Then I walk, Gabriel said simply. She looked at him. You'd leave your own company? I'd rather start again than build something on someone else's foundation. Silence. Emily took a deep breath and looked out over the yard. Everything was different now. Exposed, raw, uncertain. But there was something cleaner in the air, something lighter. Hope, maybe. Or the space truth makes when it finally takes up room. She turned to Gabriel. If we lose everything, do we still have this? Gabriel didn't blink. This is the one thing I'm sure of. And right then, with Luna asleep beside them and the weight of lies falling behind like dead leaves, Emily believed him. Not because he promised, but because he'd shown her again and again that love, real love, doesn't flinch when the spotlight hits. It stays, even when everything else threatens to pull away. The board meeting was set for Thursday. The days leading up to it passed in strange rhythms, slow mornings with too many headlines, too many emails, then fast evenings filled with strategy, supportive texts, and the quiet intensity of people bracing for impact. Emily felt like she was living two lives, one where she tried to act normal for Luna's sake, and another where every breath was laced with anticipation. Like a clock ticking just beneath her skin. Gabriel stayed calm, not because he wasn't worried, but because he refused to let fear lead. The night before the vote, they sat in his truck parked by the marsh, watching the tide roll in under the light of a quiet moon. Emily hugged her knees to her chest. You remember the first time I told you about Portland? Emily asked. Gabriel nodded. On the swing. I left out so much. You told me enough, he said. She glanced over. A part of me still believes if I hadn't stayed so long with Darius, if I had kept stricter lines, maybe none of this would have happened. Gabriel didn't look away. And a part of me believes the people who leave too early never learn what staying really means. Her throat tightened. You're not the problem, Emily, he said. Victor's need to control everything is. She was quiet for a while, the soft splash of water filling the silence. What if they vote to keep him? She asked. Gabriel leaned forward, resting his arms on the steering wheel. Then they get to keep him, and I get to walk out with my name, my work, and my soul intact. He turned toward her. And you, if you'll still come with me. Emily blinked. Where would we go? Doesn't matter, he said, as long as it's forward. The next morning, Emily dressed simply. Soft cream blouse, dark jeans, clean boots, nothing that tried too hard. Just real. Clara met her outside with a small nod and her usual calm. I'll be in the room, Clara said. Not as a voice, just as proof someone believes you don't have to raise your voice to be heard. Emily smiled. Thank you. They arrived just after 9. The boardroom in the firm's downtown office had tall windows and a view of the Willamette River. The room was bright, almost too much so, like it was trying to be honest. Victor was already seated when they entered. He gave them both a polite nod, then turned back to his notes. Gabriel stood beside Emily, tall and still. No hand-holding, no glances, just presence. It was enough. The board president, a gray-haired woman named Lillian Marks, cleared her throat. We'll keep this brief. Everyone's reviewed the materials. The allegations are serious. The ethics code is clear. Let's speak plainly. Victor's voice was cool, composed. I acted in the best interest of the company. The situation was volatile. Public image matters. We've seen that before. He didn't look at Emily. She didn't flinch. Lillian turned to Gabriel. And you, Mr. Ward? Gabriel stepped forward, calm but firm. Victor didn't protect the company. He weaponized it. He used resources to smear someone I care about, without transparency, and he jeopardized long-standing contracts to settle a personal score. Lillian raised an eyebrow. You're accusing him of sabotage? I'm stating facts, Gabriel said, and offering documentation. May, seated near the back, opened her folder. May slid a second folder across the table. Emily hadn't known she'd be there until that moment, but seeing her, calm, polished, confident, gave her breath again. Victor straightened. This is a personal matter being dragged into a professional space. No, Emily said, her voice clear. This was personal when you made it professional. The room went still. Lillian nodded slowly, then tapped her pen against the folder. We'll vote now. You'll be notified of the result before end of day. The meeting ended in quiet tension. Victor didn't look back as he left. Gabriel rested a hand on Emily's lower back as they walked out. Not for show, just to say I'm here. They didn't talk much on the way home. The waiting had its own language, one made of glances, deep sighs, fingers brushing, the occasional half-smile to keep the breath moving. That evening, the call came just after 6. Gabriel answered on speaker. "Mr. Ward?" Lillian said, "The board has voted to remove Mr. Gaines, effective immediately. You retain full ownership stake. Further steps will follow regarding PR." Gabriel didn't speak. Emily closed her eyes. "And Miss Ellis," Lillian added, "we're sorry." Emily exhaled. "Thank you." After the call, they sat in silence, letting the wind settle in without celebration. It wasn't victory that filled the room. It was relief. Later, on the porch, Emily leaned into Gabriel's side. "It's not over?" she said quietly. "No," he agreed, "but the worst part is." She nodded slowly. "And we're still here?" "That's the best part," he said. The stars came out quietly above them, and for the first time in a long time, the silence felt clean. The house was quiet that night, the kind of quiet that comes not from absence but from a long-held breath finally exhaled. Luna was asleep upstairs, curled around her stuffed rabbit, a flashlight still on beside her pillow. Emily stood in the doorway, watching her for a moment, letting the peace of that small, private world sink into her chest. The child's rhythm of safety, the steady breath of home. Downstairs, Gabriel was at the kitchen table, papers spread before him, glasses low on his nose. He looked up as Emily padded down barefoot, her steps soft against the floorboards. "You're still working?" she asked gently. "Just sorting through the wreckage," he said with a tired smile. "Turns out rebuilding a company starts with cleaning up what you didn't know was broken." She slid into the seat across from him, resting her chin in her hand. "And what about rebuilding a life?" Gabriel reached across the table, brushing her wrist with his thumb. "That starts with knowing who you want beside you in it." Emily smiled, soft and tired, but didn't look away. "Do you think this is the calm after the storm?" "I think it's the part where we choose what matters and let the rest go." They sat in comfortable silence for a few moments. Outside, the night hummed with the sounds of late summer, crickets, soft wind in the trees, the hush of a town catching its breath. Then Gabriel asked, "Have you thought about what's next?" Emily nodded slowly. "I have, but not just for me, for Luna too." He leaned back slightly, attentive. "I've been offered a position at a small clinic in Northridge," she said. "Community care, flexible hours, no press, just real people who need help." Gabriel blinked. "You didn't tell me. I wanted to be sure that I wasn't running again, that I was walking toward something this time." He smiled gently. "Are you?" "Yes," she said, "and I want it to be close to what we're building, not instead of it." Gabriel leaned forward. "Do you know what the best part of all this is?" "What?" "You stopped living someone else's version of your story." She looked at him, heart slow and steady. "I'm starting to think I never wrote the first part of it. I just followed what was expected, what looked right." "Then this is the chapter where you finally pick up the pen." She swallowed hard. "And what if I write something messy?" "Then it's honest." He reached for her hand and held it between both of his, like anchoring her to the truth she was just starting to believe. That starting again didn't mean pretending the past didn't happen. It meant living fully despite it. The next day, May hosted a quiet dinner at her garden home. Nothing fancy, just good food, long tables under string lights, and people who showed up because they cared. Clara brought homemade bread. Luna wore a new dress with sunflowers. Gabriel grilled like he'd done it 1,000 times. And Emily, for the first time in years, didn't feel like she was standing on the edge of something about to fall apart. Instead, she felt held. Not because the fear had vanished, but because love had grown stronger than it. She watched Luna twirl through the yard with a flower crown askew, and for a moment, Emily imagined 1,000 tomorrows like this. Gentle, unhurried, real. May clinked her glass at the end of the meal. "I don't want to make a speech," she said, "but I will say this. Truth doesn't always win because it's louder. It wins because it stays. It waits. It survives the spin and the silence. And eventually, it's the only thing left standing." People nodded, raised their glasses. Emily looked at Gabriel, who reached for her hand beneath the table and squeezed gently. Later that night, while cleaning up plates in the kitchen, Emily turned to find Clara watching her with that quiet, knowing gaze. "You've changed," Clara said. Emily tilted her head. For better or worse? For freer, Clara replied. You're not gripping the wheel so hard anymore. I was afraid, Emily admitted, of everything I couldn't control. Clara handed her a towel. Control is a myth. Connection. That's what saves us. Emily leaned against the counter, the towel still in her hand. Do you think people can really start over? Clara smiled. No, but I think they can finally start true. Emily nodded, the truth settling deep in her bones like a key turning gently in a long-locked door. When the guests were gone and Luna was asleep again, Gabriel and Emily stood under the porch light, barefoot on the wood. Gabriel reached into his back pocket, pulled out a small folded note. What's that? She asked. Luna gave it to me before bed, he said. Said I wasn't allowed to open it until you were standing next to me. He unfolded it. In crooked letters it read, You can love her. Now, I won't be sad. Emily's breath caught. Gabriel looked at her, his voice quiet. She gives better permission than I ever could. Tears pricked her eyes. She's braver than both of us. He stepped closer. Emily Hartwell, would you stay? She didn't hesitate. Yes, every version of yes. And just like that, under string lights and the hush of a healed storm, the next part of the story began. Not with a grand gesture, but with something stronger. A quiet, resounding certainty. It had been 6 months since the boardroom vote that shifted everything. Autumn had arrived quietly in Northridge, not the bold, gold-laced kind that northern cities wore like a crown, but softer. Sun-warmed breezes, crisp evenings, leaves tumbling across sidewalks like they had nowhere to be. The season of subtle changes. Emily stood outside the clinic's small white cottage, keys in one hand, a to-go coffee in the other. A ceramic pumpkin grinned crookedly from the porch railing. Luna had insisted they put it there. So the patients know we're friendly, she had said. Emily smiled at the thought. The clinic had become more than a workplace. It had become a rhythm, a steady heartbeat. Locals came in for wellness checks. Mothers brought babies for vaccines. Retired couples stopped by just to say hello. Emily knew most of their names now. Knew who preferred chamomile tea in the waiting room. Knew which child refused thermometers unless he could hold the stethoscope first. But today, something tugged at her in the air. A quiet shift she couldn't name yet. She pushed open the door and was greeted by the warm scent of cinnamon from May's basket of muffins at the front desk. May had dropped them off early, scribbled a note on top, the kind of day that needs sweetness. By mid-morning, the clinic buzzed with its usual calm flow. Emily checked charts, spoke with patients, made gentle jokes that coaxed laughter out of tired eyes. But just after noon, as she was washing her hands between appointments, her phone buzzed. Clara. Gabriel's renovating the library's back hall today. He said, don't come by, but he's been acting sly. Might be something worth seeing. Emily smirked. Clara never meddled unless she absolutely intended to. By late afternoon, she closed up the clinic, handed May the last of the patient logs, and slipped out into the soft golden hour that made everything in Northridge look like a painting. The library sat tucked between 2 moss-draped oaks. Emily walked the stone path slowly, the quiet pressing in around her like a held breath. Inside, the lights were low. The back hallway was roped off with a handwritten sign, still under repair. Please enter with wonder. Emily raised an eyebrow as she stepped behind the rope. The hallway opened into what had once been a forgotten reading room. Now it had been completely transformed. Soft lighting, rich wooden floors, restored bookshelves. And in the middle of the room stood Gabriel, dust on his sleeves, smoothing the collar of his shirt, like he wasn't sure it belonged to him. Emily paused. This looks nothing like the blueprints. He turned slowly, a grin forming. It wasn't meant to. What is this? He stepped toward her, then reached into his back pocket and pulled out a folded envelope. Open it. She did. Inside was a single sheet. At the top, in his handwriting, were the words, "The next chapter." Below, a list of handwritten lines. Her name is Emily Hartwell. She has a scar from trying to carry too much at once. She trusts slow, forgives quiet, and leaves space for people to find their own way back. She is not my past. She is the proof I survived it. She is not what saved me. She's what made saving myself worth it. She is the chapter I want to write for the rest of my life. The tears came fast, uninvited, catching her off guard. Not because she hadn't imagined love like this, but because she'd never believed she'd be the one standing in it. Emily stared at it, her eyes stinging. Gabriel took a breath, then dropped to one knee. "No grand speech," he said, voice trembling just enough to show it was real. "Just a question I've wanted to ask since the moment you walked into my life wearing grief like armor." He held out a simple gold band, no diamond, no glitter, just solid, honest intention. "Will you marry me? Not because it fixes anything, but because it's ours. No noise, no headlines. Just two people who chose each other, over and over." She didn't answer at first. She just nodded, slow and certain, tears spilling quietly, a laugh caught in her throat like a song trying to get out. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." They didn't kiss immediately. They just stood, forehead to forehead, the silence thick with everything they'd earned. Their hands stayed clasped like a bridge between everything broken and everything still becoming. Later that night, they walked hand in hand down the South Ridge boardwalk, wind sweeping in from the water. Luna skipped ahead, stopping every few feet to point at the moon like it was following her. "You know," Emily said softly, "this doesn't feel like a new beginning." Gabriel looked over. "No, it feels like the right continuation." He smiled. "Not every love story needs fireworks." She looked at him, eyes glowing. "Ours started with wreckage and still found its way to steady." And steady, she'd learned, wasn't boring, it was sacred. It was showing up again and again when it would be easier not to. They paused near the water's edge, Luna twirling in the grass behind them. Emily turned to him, voice low. "Do you think I'll always be known for what I went through?" Gabriel's eyes locked with hers. "No. You'll be known for what you built after." She pressed a hand to his chest, feeling the quiet strength there. "Then let's keep building." In the distance, the church bells rang 8 times, soft and slow, and with the sound came something that had taken its time to arrive. Not peace that erases the past, but the kind that grows around it. A garden from ashes, a love not loud but lasting. Because sometimes the most beautiful love story isn't the one that starts with magic, it's the one that chooses to stay when the magic fades. And in that quiet, steady promise, Emily finally found home. So the story is over. Our wonderful friends, are you still here at this hour? If you're really here, still reading or listening, then maybe, just maybe, something in this story has touched your heart. Maybe you've seen a piece of yourself in Emily's courage or Gabriel's steady strength. Maybe you felt the ache of being misunderstood or the fear of letting someone truly see you. And maybe now, like them, you're wondering, can I start again? Am I allowed to be whole, even after everything? The answer, from every quiet page of this story, is yes. Life isn't about finding a perfect beginning. It's about choosing to stay when the magic fades, when the past is loud, and the future feels fragile. It's about building something true from what's been broken. Like that quote from Henry Nouwen says, "The wounds of our lives need to become the wombs of our healing." That's what Emily did. That's what Gabriel stood beside. And maybe that's what you're learning to do too. You see, we don't always get to rewrite the past, but we do get to decide how it ends. We get to love gently, even when it's hard. We get to believe in belonging, even when we've lived most of our days bracing for the worst. And we get to keep building, slowly, surely, one honest day at a time. So if you're still here, still feeling something stir in your chest, take it as a sign. You're allowed to bloom. Even if it's late, even if it's messy, even if the world told you you couldn't. And now, if this story meant something to you, would you do something simple but powerful? Like it, share it, subscribe to the channel, because somewhere out there someone else needs to be reminded that quiet love, honest healing, and second chances are real, and they begin right here.